dying of thirst in the Australian heat. You're like just looking at your water and you can't touch it. I was bitten by a spider in Bali. Learning how to trust yourself as well is really important. For like 8 days, you don't know where your next water source is going to be. You stood on a peak above the clouds and you think, oh my gosh, this was so worth it.
If you have ever wanted to understand why we should be asking for nature's help on mindsets, adventures, and more, then you're in the right place. So welcome to Maximize Nature. Welcome to Maximize Nature. Today's guest is Ruby Lewis. Ruby has completed a year of travelling where she went across the world and experienced new things in Australia, Bali, New Zealand, the UK, and many more. We're going to explore with Ruby what her thought process was leading up to, during, and after travelling, as well as how she thinks nature can provide the helping hands to people like you and me. Then we can take the good thoughts and put them in a travel bag, ready to use in our next adventure. Let's introduce Ruby to everyone. Ruby, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, my name is Ruby Lewis. I've just finished a master's course in journalism. I have done a few brief work periods for ITV and LBC. So that's kind of what I do professionally. But apart from that, I've just been a person that likes to take too many gap years in between my courses and jobs, basically. That's the best way I could describe myself.
Perfect. How did you get into travelling, and why were these the places you chose to travel and have the experiences you did, like with ITV, for example?
It's all a bit of a mismatch, really. It's quite difficult to put it all in one, to sum it all up. The main thing I'd say, it all started when I finished my A-levels, which is really going back quite a few years now. But I really struggled with my A-levels. I found them really difficult. The exams, the pressure of it. And I'm sure loads of your listeners could relate, but during my GCSEs, loved it, easy. And I got to A-levels and I was like, this is really difficult. And I got really burned out. And the idea of going to uni straight off the back of taking all those exams was so daunting. And I guess my mentality was I just ran away. I just thought I booked a one-way flight to Australia. I applied for a job, which is basically a hiking assistant in a school. And I had no idea what to expect. And I just booked a one-way ticket and flew out there and then started this job 4 days later. And it was the hardest but most rewarding kind of job ever. It's so unique. So that's how I got into it. I kind of fell into it. I didn't really think from a young age, I really, really want to go travelling. But once I got out there and I was in Australia, then it kind of fell into place and I couldn't stop.
With the hiking system, was that where in Australia was that?
So that's based in a place, so it's in the state of Victoria, which is where Melbourne is. That's the very south of Australia. And it's in a mountain range called the Mount Buller High Country. So you can actually go skiing there in the wintertime, because it's that high up. They have snow. And you think, Australia, you don't think of snow. But the campus, the whole organisation, the best way to try and explain it to your listeners is it's a school. And these kids kind of go there for a year and they have to hand in their phones on their first day of term. They're not allowed any connection to the internet. If they want to contact their parents, they have to write letters. They sleep in these big kind of nature dorm rooms, a bit like a summer camp kind of thing. And they arrive there and they think, it's going to be some amazing kind of summer camp. And the very first day that they do a 1-day hike and then they do a 2K run. And then they run 4 times a week and we hike the rest of the other days. And then the hikes get progressively longer. So by the end of the school year, these kids can run a marathon and then we go on an 8-day hike. And that's all self-sustaining all through the high country. And we'll kind of reach elevation of about 2,500 meters. And it was amazing. So that's the best way to describe Timbertop. That's the name of the school. And that was the best way to describe my role as well. I would basically just supervise these children on hikes and make sure that none of us were going to die.
Love it. Yeah. No, that sounds absolutely mad, to be fair. With your travels and everything, what was your thought process? I know we touched on it a little bit, but what do you think the relationship is between travelling and things like radio?
It's really interesting actually, because the school that I was working at, this Timbertop place, they were really, really big on not listening to music when the kids would go on runs. And obviously these runs got like progressively longer, and harder, and it was all like really extreme trail running, so lots of elevation. So they really made a point of us not listening to music, so we were always like listening out for each other on the run, so you'd always hear behind you or in front of you. But then once a term, the kids were all allowed to have like an iPod, or like an iPod Nano or something. They weren't allowed screens, so it was like one of those sort of things you can...
The classic one.
And the kids were all allowed to... the old school ones.
Oh, I love it.
And they were all allowed to listen to one of their runs. And every single child got a PB. Like, they beat all of their previous times, their splits were better, just because they'd listened to music for the first time doing a run. And it just shows you, doesn't it? Like, nothing had changed except the fact they were listening to music, and all of a sudden, you know, it just puts your whole headspace... I don't know, I think you can push harder, it puts you in a more positive mind space. I just think it's the soundtrack, isn't it? It's the soundtrack to your life, listening to music in your AirPods or whatever it is. And you can like set your own tone, like if you're travelling, and, you know, you can have that kind of movie soundtrack if you want, or if you're on a long run or you're on a trail run, you can play music for the first time. Yeah, I think it's just brilliant. The best soundtrack you can have is like the music in your ears, I think.
Oh, 100%, yeah. Like, it's actually mental, because the amount of like times I've put my music in on the odd one and I haven't really felt it. I've gone quickly. It's been lovely. But yeah, no, that sounds incredible, to be fair. With your year abroad and everything, what were the challenges you faced before, during, and after the time period?
Ooh. So I'm talking specifically about the time I went to Australia. The hardest thing about going to Australia, I didn't feel like I was going to get homesick. I really, really needed a change. That's what I needed, especially after A-levels. But I got there and I was so jet lagged and overwhelmed is probably the best way to put it. Anybody that's gone on like a big trip, and they, you know, if you book a one-way flight somewhere and you don't know when you're coming back, the moment you feel slightly uncomfortable in that new city. So I was walking around Melbourne by myself before I got the bus to the campus, and I was just like, what have I done? Like, I'm so out of my comfort zone. I'm so nervous about, you know, you don't have any friends. I went completely by myself. And I think it's just learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's probably that's the hardest thing when you start, but it's the best thing you can learn. And I'm so much better for it. So that was the hardest thing going out there. During, when I started this job as a running and hiking assistant, I was not prepared for how physically challenging it would be, because I came in halfway through the year and started my job about 6 months in. So the first run that I did with the students was 14k. I think that's a fairly big distance for anyone, but it was all trail. It's all like hill trail runs, which is a completely different like ball game to how I was normally running, which is very flat and all of that. So I found it just so physically demanding, and it's learning how to trust yourself as well is really important. So a lot of the hikes, especially we did some like 5-day hikes and 6-day hikes, and that's like you have to carry all of your water, all of your food, everything you're going to need, and you're hiking through Australia. Like you have to have legs to make sure you're not going to be bitten by snakes, and make sure that you have all these kind of sprays, so if you do get bitten by something, you'll be okay. And I remember being on the 3rd day of this hike, and we'd walked 50 kilometers, which is big. We'd been up at 4 a.m. We'd walked, and we'd like left when it was dark, packed up camp, and we got in at about 9 p.m. And I would just be walking for so long, so many hours. I remember setting up my tent, making sure all the kids were okay, that they'd eaten. I got in my tent and I just cried, because I thought that was the hardest, most challenging thing I've ever done. But then in the morning, I woke up And, you know, the night before I'd just been like, this is the most difficult thing. It's horrible. Like, I'd taken my boots off, my hiking boots, and because it was so cold outside, my socks were sticking. And I was like, I'm going to die. But then in the morning, which I think this is what's really important, like, have that really challenging experience in the morning. I unzipped my tent and we were on a mountain that's like 2,000 meters up, and you can just see the clouds all below you. You stood on a peak above the clouds and you think, oh my gosh, this was so worth it. Like, this is the payoff for these awful few days hiking and gaining all this height. And now look at us, like, it was just incredible. It was really, really nice.
Yeah. No, that's, wait, were you, how often did you stop for like water breaks though? Because surely with like all of that, you must have needed to properly hydrate and everything.
So we would have to take water purifier tablets.
Oh, yeah.
So you would fill up on a stream, or because and the place, so we were hiking the Victorian High Country, which is obviously it's a mountain range in Australia. And because you're so high up, when you're really, really close to the summit, you can drink the water and you don't have to treat it, and it's completely fine because a lot of the animals don't live up there either. So, you can do that, or we would get into a good habit of boiling our water in the evening as well. So we'd have to just take it from streams basically. So that was something as well, coming from the UK where there's a tap in every bathroom and every kitchen, you can go and fill it up for like 8 days. You don't know where your next water source is going to be, and you have to factor that in on the map and where you're going to stop and how long it's, you know, like just little things. Waiting for a water purifier tablet to work, you have to wait 20 minutes. So even if you're dying of thirst in the Australian heat, you're like just looking at your water and you can't touch it because you're waiting for it to be safe. So yeah, it was really good. And there's always the distant prospect of a snake bite as well. So there's things that can kill you everywhere in Australia. But in the Victorian High Country, they have these things called brown snakes, which are incredibly dangerous. If you get bitten by one, say goodbye. Like, there's not much help that you can do. And it was really scary because we would wear these things called, I think they're called gaiters. They basically go up to your knee and you strap them around your, the whole of your calf basically. So if you do get bitten, they can't penetrate your skin. So you'd have some really dodgy tan lines anyway, but you know, better than being bitten by a brown snake. Yeah. But one of there was lots of assistants, like lots of people my age who were 18, 19, who were going and doing the same job as myself. And a girl called Vanessa, she was German, became one of my best friends. She got bitten by a snake on one of these hikes, and she had to be kind of like carried to the main road, which is kilometers away, so far away, to get her to a place where like an ambulance or a bush ranger could come and pick her up. And the thing with a snake bite is you don't want anyone to move. So you get bitten by a snake and you basically wrap up their whole leg to stop the whole circulation, taking that blood to the heart where the venom would go through. But obviously when someone's been bitten by a snake, you think, oh my gosh, we've got to get her out ASAP. So we had to kind of like carry her to the nearest road to get her transported out. But you don't want to move someone who's been bitten by a snake, because if the venom has gone into their system, you don't want them to be moving and putting it all through their heart. So you basically want to slow their heart rate down, which is very hard. If you know, you've been bitten by a snake, it's really hard to get a resting heart rate of 42. It's not going to happen. Yeah, so she was obviously quite panicked, and we had to take her to a road, and one of like the park rangers had to come and get her on like this very hairy 4x4 drive. Yeah, and they took her out of there and she was fine. So yeah, she lives to tell the tale.
Lovely. After you came back, is there anything about the challenge that you changed or do differently?
I think coming back from it, the thing that I do differently is appreciate it whilst I was there, because I found it so physically hard, especially on our 8-day hike. We had covered some serious kilometres. We were doing like between 30 kilometres a day to 50. So we were just walking from like, we would leave before it got light in the morning, pack our campsite up in the dark. would set up our campsite in the dark. Really, really like grueling hiking. It was a complete physical challenge. And I just, at the time, I found it really difficult, and I don't think I could properly absorb like the places that I look back at my camera roll now, and you just think, I cannot believe I was up there. Like, it felt like I was on like, the roof of the world. Obviously it's not Everest, but it was just stunning to be waking up above the clouds, or to be hearing all of the different birds like waking up, and they're so different to the birds in the UK. They sound scary almost. They're really, really loud. And I just don't think I had enough appreciation for what was around me. I was so focused on like trying to stay alive and trying to like keep going, and just putting one foot in front of the other, that I couldn't really absorb how beautiful everything was around me. The school actually has a term. The school has a saying, and they call it second-hand fun. In hindsight, you've been walking with all of these people, and I was walking with colleagues and the students that I was looking after, and it was really tough at the time, but then in hindsight, it's so much fun. They call it second-hand fun. And you go, oh my gosh, wasn't that the most amazing thing ever? But you think, well, at the time, I wasn't actually really enjoying it. It's only when you take a step back you think, yeah, it was brilliant. So, yeah, second-hand fun. That was probably something I took away from it. I don't think I'd really do anything differently. I just wish I'd paid more attention, I think. That's the main thing.
Yeah, it's definitely that thing of, like you said, second-hand fun. Even in something as simple as a run, having that cheeky pint, like nothing, it's not going to hurt you at all, just to look back, drink your hydration tablets, and then get back to it and really appreciate where you are and how far you've come. Yeah,
definitely. So yeah, that's probably something I would do differently. But it was really interesting coming back to the UK after having a year of running these grueling trail runs 3 times a week, and then hiking for the other 4, and then those hikes getting longer and harder and steeper and all of those things. Coming back to the UK, and everybody's attitude of like, oh no, I'm not drinking that, or oh, I'm not going to do that, or I just couldn't believe how, I don't know, unprepared people were to put themselves out there to go and try something. So the moment I came back to the UK, one of my best mates, he said, oh, do you want to go on a road trip and we can go and do the 3 peaks? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. I've done so much hiking in Australia. I'm super up for that. But all my other friends said no, they didn't want to do it. They were like, it was too hard. Why would you do it? And I just think, especially our generation, the generations below us, it's so important to still like push yourself and still be comfortable with being really uncomfortable, and having that second-hand fun and putting yourself in the way of like difficult challenges.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I was the same when I came back from Australia and New Zealand. Like, so many people here, I think it's quite, I don't know how to put it, maybe kind of sad for them, really. They don't want to go out and test their boundaries. I really do think that if you do, number one, you have no idea what's going to happen, so there's excitement and fun in that. But number 2, you're also going to be mentally and physically better for yourself.
Yeah, I think once you go outside, it puts everything into perspective. You're like, oh, I can actually do this. And it just, your whole mental kind of like game changes when you're outside, and when you feel like you can look after yourself for 8 days hiking, or on a trail, and you're 200 kilometers away from the nearest like service tower or something like that. I think you learn to trust yourself a lot, and I'm sure when you were hiking as well, and you were in some situations where you thought, oh, I can't contact anyone, or what happens if something goes wrong, you become really confident in your own ability, and you're like, you know what, it doesn't matter because I know I can look after myself. And I think that's the most important thing with traveling, is you can rely on yourself, and you don't have to rely on anyone else to do it for you.
Yeah, I remember a couple of times when I tried to get back from somewhere, I looked at my phone, I was like, oh my days, I have like 5% left, and I have a 45-minute walk to do. What do I do? So I ended up just going with the flow, backing myself, and I made it. With travelling and everything, for some of our listeners, and I know I would be if I haven't travelled before, they'd be inspired by what you've said. what would you think the basic equipment or mindset you need to get started and actually plan that first experience abroad or away from home?
I think the main thing, it doesn't really, for me, I'd say it doesn't really matter about your equipment because you learn that. So for me, I wasn't well equipped to hiking. I bought so many extra things that I didn't need, and I brought a trangier instead of like a gas stove, things like that, which were really heavy, and they made my pack really, really heavy. And you just learn on the job or on the hike or on the run what didn't work and what did work and what would you take next time. And so that I wouldn't worry. I would encourage your listeners not to worry about the equipment. You'll learn that, and that's something that's like your own thing. I think the main thing that they should, be prepared for is just have a really open mind. Like, just be prepared. Like, if something doesn't always work out, and I think that's the main thing, just have an open mind. If someone says, oh, do you want to go and walk and see this glacier today? Yeah, go and do it. Like, just have an open mind, experience new things. That's my only advice, really.
Yeah, I think that's really underrated mindset to have, because that's often the key for doing anything, really. Like, you need to be open-minded. You can't just be so closed-minded. You need to be able to change, otherwise things will change without you. You'll sort of feel left behind. I mean, I know I have that thought process anyway. It's a really interesting thing with like what different people need, etc. And I think it is really just that open-mindedness.
Yeah.
When you were away in Australia, because everybody loves a Tim Tam, what was your one treat or snack you always had while you're on the go?
Oh, well, I mean, when we were hiking, because you're so conscious of how heavy your bag is, you would have like only dehydrated food and that's it. But the one thing that I would sneak into my bag is Whittaker's chocolate, and they only do it in Australia and New Zealand. I'm sure you must have had it in New Zealand, and that is the best chocolate. Oh my gosh, I can't say how good it is. Yeah, you just can't beat it, and that is oh my god. I would drop everything for a bar of Whittaker's. It's just stunning. The fact it's in like gold wrapping as well, it feels like so luxurious. Oh my god, especially if you've just been having like dehydrated food and dehydrated like banana and strawberry slices. A bit of Whittaker's, game changer. Yes. All of a sudden the evening is bearable.
Speaking of a sweet treat, like you said, the Whittaker's chocolate bar, which we both know are incredible. Let's play a game. Let's play the sweet treat. Ruby, your task is to tell me 3 things. 1 truth and 2 falsehoods about your adventures in Australia, and then I must pick the sweet truth correctly. Either I get the sweet victory of picking the truth, or you get the sweet victory of persuading you to pick incorrectly. Are you ready?
Yeah, wait. Oh, I have to think about this. This is hard. Wait, does it have to be just about my time in Australia, or does it have to be? Can it be from any of my little travels?
Any of the little travels.
Okay, fine. I saw a Tasmanian devil on my road trip round Tasmania. It was a road trip for 2 weeks, and we saw the very elusive Tasmanian devil. When I lived in New Zealand for a year, I saw a kiwi, and I was bitten by a spider in Bali.
Oh, okay. The second one, where did you see the kiwi?
Oh, I was probably in the North Island, and there's a like Maori education centre where you can go and see all of these like hot steam pools and these like mud pits, and you can also, there's like it's like a Maori university for all of their carvings which they put into their local maraes, and there were some kiwis there.
Was this in Rotorua by any chance?
It wasn't Rotorua, but it was like, no, it wasn't in Rotorua. I think it was probably near Wellington. It was on that thermal highway or whatever they call it.
How big was said spider in Bali?
Oh, it was probably the size of like a 50 pence coin. But in Bali, anybody that's ever been to Asia, these spiders are like colourful spiders. They've got like bright green on them, and I put my hand under the table when I was like getting ready for dinner. We'd gone to this restaurant, and I poured myself like in like on the table. I grabbed the table to tuck my chair in, and I got bitten by the spider, and it made like a horrible little like sound as it bit me.
I can't remember if I'd seen that on your Instagram before, because knowing you would have put it on there. But anyway, with the Tasmanian devil, was it only one, or were they in packs? Not packs, sorry, like two or three.
It was only one. It was by itself.
I want to pick the Tasmanian devil because it's the one that you said straight away, and I kind of feel like you go with the truth straight away. But
lots of psychoanalysis there.
Thank you. It's part of the game. Oh, I'm in between that and the spider. I'm a stick with my gut. I'm gonna go with that you saw the Tasmanian devil.
No, I was bitten by a spider in Bali.
Wait, is it on your Instagram?
No, what? I wouldn't post that. I cried. I honestly cried. It was horrible. It was really painful as well. And my mindset as well, I was like, oh my god, I'm in Asia. I've been bitten by this like fluorescent spider. I'm going to die. But I was actually fine. Like, nothing happened, but I cried. It's very embarrassing, actually. It ruins the whole, like, Bali, like, bikini aesthetic. Me being, like, huddled, crouching over my hands, screaming.
Oh, damn it, okay. Well, you win that one. Well done.
I was going to say, the other ones, they were like, I stuck close to the truth because when I was in Tasmania, we only saw dead Tasmanian devils because they'd all been hit by cars, which was actually very sad. So we never saw like a proper Tasmanian devil. They were all just dead ones. And then in New Zealand, we did go to this like Maori education centre, and there was an enclosure of kiwis, but we just couldn't see any.
Well, congratulations, Ruby. You won. You're going to have to come back in. I'm going to try and have to level the score next time. Now, Ruby, for the listeners, when you got to that viewpoint, or I'm guessing the many viewpoints you looked out at over in Australia, what do you remember about that moment? Just so people listening can live the experience vicariously.
Oh, I think the main thing is the first thing you feel is just the relief of you're not having to keep walking uphill with a bag that weighs like 13 kilos on your back. Like, it's the relief of being able to take your bag off, sitting down and just like having those first few minutes to recover. And then I think the next feeling that happens is you look out across, you've got a 360 degree view of the world, like, that is at your feet. And it's just phenomenal. I can remember one specific campsite that we reached, and it was after we'd climbed this thing called Helispur, and that was a really, really steep climb of about 6 or 7 hours of just, it was like on all fours climbing up. It was that steep. You can't go down it. It's that steep. And we finally made it to this campsite, and the evening sun kind of broke through these clouds, because obviously we're so high up, we're usually covered in cloud and all of this, and the sun kind of broke through, and everything just glowed orange, like all of the eucalyptus trees and the pine trees, and we had just made it out of the tree line, because obviously they stopped growing at a certain point, and it was just incredible to see, once the sun kind of lit everything up, that how far we'd come. And you could look down and you think, I cannot believe that my legs have taken me from all the way down there, like I can't even see where I started. And 3 days later, we're looking at this incredible view. And it's just so rewarding to get up and just see, you know, you're above the trees, you're above the clouds. And when the sun gets to a particular height and the temperature drops, you have this thing where the clouds kind of like rush over the side of one of the mountains because of the cooling of the evening. And it looks like water, like pouring into a valley, but it's just cloud. And that was just incredible to see that. And you just feel like you're part of something bigger. It's amazing. That
sounds like a once in a lifetime experience, which I know I'm definitely be down to go experience at some point. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Some people would want to experience Australia for the first time, like you did. Where do you think your next adventure is? And do you promise to tell us more about it, even if it involves getting bit by another spider?
God, I hope not. I don't know. It's difficult to know because I've lived in Australia for a year when I was 18 and 19, after A-levels. And then after university, as you know, I went to New Zealand for a year and then did lots of travelling there. So I feel like I've done that kind of like Oceania thing. I've given 2 years of my life to living over that way. I think my next adventure, I'd really love to go through Africa. I don't know where yet or how. I'd love to climb Kilimanjaro. Yeah, no, I really want to get, and it's something as well, like, I don't know, just feels like a challenge as well, it's just very different, and I haven't experienced that yet.
Yeah, no, I was lucky enough to go to Zambia in 2019. It was very scary, but honestly, one of the best 2 week periods of my life. Like, we were out there helping, orphan children. It was so, I guess the word's inspiring, even if it did involve me getting bitten and having a very swollen ankle for about 4 days. Because, yeah, we were very stupidly playing football on an uneven surface, and I rolled my ankle very badly.
Oh no.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Maximise Nature podcast, Ruby. One last task. Write down a nature phrase. Either text me, message me on Instagram, something like that I must get into my next podcast without my guest knowing.
What was the nature phrase from your previous guest? What was the nature phrase that you got into this episode?
So it was a little bit butchered, but it was from Ethan Herman. It was, a cheeky mid-run pint never hurt nobody, so I got it as close as I could without being very, very vague.
Do you know what? I thought it's weird that you said that. I was like, why would you have a pint mid-run? Oh god, I couldn't imagine, honestly, I couldn't imagine anything worse. That is a lie. If he says a mid-run pint doesn't hurt anyone, lies. That is a killer. That's gonna kill you. It'll kill you right off.
Yeah, but, yeah, true. I mean, the game's the game, isn't it? I got it in there, so we'll take the win. Like I said, Ruby, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Maximise Nature podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Until next time, get out and explore what's beyond your front door.